Okay, should be enough time for everyone to show up now. Thank you all for turning up. My name is Peter. I'll be doing our presentation today. So I'm a technical specialist over at Intrinsis, and this is the third of the webinars done so far. For those of you who have missed the last two, they are available on intrinsis.com. You can just download them. You should find a banner at the top which leads you to them. But for now, welcome to this webinar on EBOM and the ERP exchange, and also a little bit on configuration management. Not the most exciting of subjects for a lot of people, but it's something we all have to deal with, and it's important to get it right. So let's make a start. Right, so your designers make a bill of materials, and in the ideal world, you pass that bill of materials over to all manner of different people, because everyone needs to know about the part numbers, what you're putting together, what you're doing with it, and what you're ultimately selling. So it's very, very important to get this data right. And not only internally to the business, but also outside with suppliers and customers whom you need to give accurate data to, so that you get the right parts back from them, the right revision with the right notes, and the customers get what they asked for. But you and I all know, designers make their lovely BOM. Our product engineers try and use the BOM, but they make some updates, and the real world comes in, they make updates, they make corrections. What you see in CAD world is never exactly what you see in the BOM. It's never exactly what you order. And there's always little arguments and blame games going on with that. So what we try to do with 3DEXPERIENCE is take these two separate worlds and put them together in one place. So the designers get their data in and drive the EBOM directly. So instead of trying to manually export an Excel sheet, which then gets forgotten about, not updated for ages, you now have a direct EBOM sync, as it's called, where the engineers get the right data and can also pass back their changes straight into the design world. And it's all managed with a single change process. And we also have the means to take this data and integrate it with ERP systems via XML-based outputs, or just simple CSV or Excel spreadsheets, so that the ERP systems that you use will also get updates live or on certain triggers, so they're up to date as well, and they're ordering what they need to be ordering rather than out-of-date data, which is generally just scrap. And also, 3DEXPERIENCE gives you the power to incorporate configurations into your work, so you don't have to maintain multiple different BOMs of products that are just a tiny little bit different to each other. You can maintain them all into one structure. So what we have here, the video showing, this is the EBOM as synchronized from CAD, and this is the CAD structure on the right here. And you can see how they're the same thing. And even on the BOM structure, you get little icons and 2D thumbnails pulled across, because when you get down to it, slow down a bit. When you get down to it, you end up with just having a little image makes a huge amount of difference, because when you have a lot of part numbers, they just blur into one, and it's not really always that clear, especially with certain descriptions, what it is you're actually looking at. And a little image can make all the difference in that regard, and this does it automatically. Another very powerful tool, what we're seeing here, is the BOM compare report, where not only can we compare different assemblies, but we can also compare different revisions of the same assembly, and also the same assembly and the same revision, but comparing everything in its latest form and everything with its last released form. So you can see what updates have happened. And if we could look down here in the summary, you can see what's happened with add codes, difference codes, and you can have a difference only report, and all of these are exportable. And there is even the ability to have a side-by-side 3D view of the assembly, so you can see, as is the case here, what parts have been added. So you can already see the tree slightly longer, and there's these bolts here that have been added since the last update. So now they can see what's coming a little bit more in advance and not have any horrible surprises when it comes to purchasing. So, and also, yeah, by clicking on each one, you can cross-highlight and check which ones are in both and which ones are not. Okay, so moving on. We face a bit of a problem these days where customers want everything their way, and we're all familiar with this. So the first examples here are bikes. You know, you go to a shop, you don't just buy a bike, you want to buy a bike in the color you want with the right mods you want. And obviously when you go and buy a shirt, you can go to companies now who you can give you a shirt in any size you want with whatever you want written on it in whatever color you want. But slowly and surely, this is moving into other areas as well. So we're familiar certainly with getting our phones and our high-tech gear in different forms, and we're certainly familiar with picking options out for our cars, where you can be asked, I want to have an air conditioning unit, but what that actually means is quite a lot of different changes sometimes. And also it's getting to the point where industrial equipment and also aerospace are coming to this point where you have variants of different aircraft, but not actually modeled as different aircraft. They're all done as one big bomb and filtered as required on configuration. So obviously we need some planning here, and the 3DEXPERIENCE platform has the means to turn what they call product configurations into 100% bombs using what they call configuration features, which, the long and the short of it, the configuration feature is what you ask the customer. Do you want a sunroof? Do you want air conditioning? Do you want leather seats? Rather than how it translates onto the actual BOM, which we'll just look at shortly. So if we look here, this is running on our 3DEXPERIENCE platform. This is just a web page, as it was with the BOM, so no need for any complex install there. And we have our product line down the side and our different product ranges. And we have our model, which is our TX1000, and a hardware product in there. So a hardware product is simply what you sell. And here we have some configuration features. And these are basically, as I said, what you ask the customer what they want. So what sort of trims you want, what sort of wheels you want, what fender you like. And some of these you have to ask the design, so you must answer them. Some of them are just optionals, as we'll see. So you'll see not mandatory and mandatory down the right-hand side there. So here we have a 4-cylinder and a 6-cylinder version in this particular car design. So then we can have, it's more than just having options though. What you can define are compatibility rules, which are, if you have this, you must have this, or you can't have this. Either in the sense of physically it doesn't fit, or it won't work. So in this example here, the 6-cylinder engine requires that ventilated front fender, if you look at the top baseline. And it's also been made deliberately incompatible with the non-ventilated front fender, because presumably it simply won't work if you do that. And these rules are built with a fairly simple editor where you can build up fairly complex logical statements about what you must have with what, unless you have what, etc., etc. And not only do you have these in physical rules, but you also have, if you see at the top there, marketing preferences, where you can disallow certain configurations simply because you don't believe you're going to sell something like that. For example, you wouldn't sell leather seats in a car with seat warmers, but then not bother putting the air conditioning unit in. You physically can do that, but you wouldn't actually expect to sell very many of those. There we go. So a few marketing preferences here. So saying one of the trims must go with the alloy wheels there, or the chrome wheels. So a bit more left in this video, which you will catch up with me. So now we can have a look at what this actually looks like in 3D, because it's all very well being able to ask these questions, but we need to see how this actually looks, how it applies to the CAD. So here we are looking in the system, not necessarily as a CAD designer. Any user could come in here and look at this, and we can break down the car and see one of the features that actually changes. So you build the CAD tree, sorry, in 150%, so every part possible superimposed on each other. And if you look at these arches here, you can see there's actually two different sorts superimposed, one with the ventilation and one without. And so when we open up our little tool here, we can check what the effectivity is on these configuration objects. And you see they turn blue, saying they have variants, they have rules applied to them, whereas everything else is white, implying that it's common across all builds. And so now we also know from those bubbles there what the differences were. So, moving on. We also have this 3D configurator, as it's known. So to explain what's going on here, it's all very well having all these options set, but you need to build a configuration. The system will not make every possible configuration you have, because if you actually work out how many different permutations of all of the options you could possibly put on, you will have potentially thousands, if not potentially millions, of different possible configurations. So it's not going to resolve all those for you. You need to tell it which ones you need to do, including on the fly, if you require. Customer may come up with a new configuration you've never built before, but we can still do that. It's not a problem. So before we start, none of these are selected. So what you're seeing here on the right is all the common parts to this particular car. So all the things you need, no matter what you pick. And so I'm going to pick these options here. Pick that rim. So it's made that appear there. And the clever trick here is here. So after picking these options, you may have noticed other options have actually picked for him. And when he actually opens one up, he'll see that it's picked it for him because all the remaining options have been excluded because of compatibility rules, which we saw earlier. So since it's only got one option left, it picks it for you, saves you clicking. But we can switch between 3-door and 5-door and update the visualization as appropriate. We can have a look at that. And then we can also see what this looks like in a more 2D compatibility matrix. So we can see what goes with what. And the stars here simply mean the default. So if you pick something, by default, it'll pick this option for you, but you can pick the other white squares. So nice and clear, nice and easy to understand. And also lets you see, it's a validation tool as much as anything, so it'll let you spot any particular issues that you can't, or any particular combinations that you didn't think of that don't actually work, that you need to check, etc., etc. And finally, on configuration, we can filter the product structure via configuration rule for ready for CAD use by using the filtering system. So designers can open just what they need rather than opening everything superimposed and have to do constant hide shows to try and work out what they actually need to be looking at. So it's you're making the configuration basically up in real time. So we're now showing with that filter there, sorry, that air hole there. And we're showing that now designer has enough data to work with here to be able to work in 100% configuration, as it will. So just needs to pick the other fog lights, so everything they need to work around is there. So you see the fog light cap is now on as well because it's superimposed both options. Hang on, I'm getting a connection issue warning on my end here. Is everything okay? Okay. Apologies for that. I'm just getting a warning on my dashboard here. Okay. And the designer then carries on designing in position. So, what's the point of all this? And it's quite simple, really. Don't have so many errors, because errors are expensive. Ordering the wrong part can be very expensive, and I've heard pretty much every company I go visit and talk to will be able to recite a story of that time they ordered revision A instead of revision B and threw away 20 grand straight into the bin because someone didn't put one line in one Excel spreadsheet correct before sending it out. So it eliminates errors by being clear, having it all in one place, and therefore you just have all the information there, and therefore you can make better decisions, work quicker, do it right first time. So we'll go through a little example of what I mean by this. Some of you will be very familiar with this scenario already. So what we'll do is we'll have this designer here is going to make a cube. Very boring, I realize, but they're just going to make this one cube. So there you go, first revision of a cube. And your co-worker wants this, so they've taken a copy of it, working file-based. So no, not using 3DEXPERIENCE, not using any kind of PDM system. They have a copy of it. They make some modifications to this cube. Okay, great. And then you need to make some modifications to it, but you're using your original file because you didn't get it back from them. Okay, so now we have two cubes that are slightly different. And then we've got our colleague over there who needs to have this data for their purposes. So you sent your version. And then we have our colleague down in manufacturing who needs to also do their work and do some derivative modeling, some tool pathing, NC machine planning, etc., etc. So they're using one version of this. And then you make another revision of it. So that one's out of date. And this one's out of date. And everything they worked on is out of date. And then when our poor fellow over here tries to find this part number, they find 5 different versions of it, think, Christ, what's going on there? And then they make their own version of it because it's quicker than trying to work out which one's correct. So you've just got to make, for the fairly simple scenario of only having 5 people, you've got 6 different variants of the same part. So all this work needs to be redone, these changes need to be merged, these tool paths need to be redone when you finally work out which one it is, and there's a lot of emails, and a lot of phone calls, a lot of scratched heads working out what's going on here. And the completion of this part takes weeks. When really, we want everyone to work in the same system, looking at the same data, and take only days to make it. So you can, as I say, you can see what's going on, you can see what's working. You have full traceability, and you can make decision making based on live, up-to-date data rather than exports or out-of-date data you gathered a week beforehand. You can control the process. So when one person's working on a part, no one else can, and it's obvious they're working on it. And we can have a change control process to ensure that when things get signed off, they're signed off properly and everyone's aware. And ultimately, make it work faster, make it work better, and get quicker time to market. So on the subject of change control, there is a general purpose change system. So in previous releases, there was different change processes for different parts of the system. But now in 3DEXPERIENCE, they've got a system now where all change of all kinds, so we have BOM, we have CAD, we have documentation, we have requirements, configuration management options, they're all controlled through one change control process. You can have different approvers on each of them, different people signing it off, but it's done one system, so when one person knows how to use the change control system, they can do it across everything. And so it makes training much, much easier to understand, and much easier to assess bottlenecks and compare between one process and another. So as we see here, we can look, and when we do it, it's got some intelligence that you can look up not only the part numbers you look for, but also the CAD that makes up it, and also where it's used, so you might want to change that as well. And we can also, this is an example of a change order sheet here. Here's our affected items. And it's got some SolidWorks data here, SolidWorks drawing, and it's BOM. That's saying for revision. Nice and easy to understand. Okay, so that's, without going into a full training session on how the change process works, I'll move on to how the actual data is exchanged. So we have a BOM. We have multiple levels. We can do various different reports. So we can have consolidated rolled up BOMs, multi-level BOMs, compared BOMs as we saw earlier, and also ones with showing different effectivities, different configurations, etc., etc. We, of course, once we have all those, we want to do something with it, and often that means passing it on to an ERP system. We have connectors for this, and we can write them as need be using XML. We can do it based on whatever triggers you wish. The usual problem here is not can we do it, but deciding with yourselves how we do it, when we do it, what data do you want to move, what data do you want to come back, etc., etc. That's generally what the only real difficulty about it. So that's something you need to think about. And we have a basic integration framework, as courtesy of our new friends over at Technia Transcat, which allows us to export data out of the Innovia PLM system or 3DEXPERIENCE PLM system and send it to various different systems using its own little database for traceability, so you know what's gone and what's not, what's out of date, etc., etc. And that is our very whistle-stop tour of the EBOM and change and configuration management. So I hope you'll see us again for our upcoming webinars, including the multiple CAD programs one, because I'll be doing that one as well. I'll be glad to see you again. And I shall now see if any questions have turned up in the meantime. If anyone else wants to unmute themselves now, please feel free and throw some questions at me. Otherwise, thank you for coming. So, have we got any questions? Oh, you have to unmute them all. I'm told they're fairly few type of questions in. I'm not getting any questions. Oh, we have a question. There's a question about handling process BOM in 3DEXPERIENCE. I'm assuming this means manufacturing process BOM, and the answer is yes, where there is capability in Delmia branded apps in the native client to basically reorganize the CAD structure, which may or may not reflect how you actually put the thing together, and reorganize it into an order which makes sense when the people have it in their hands and putting the pieces together, showing the intermediate assemblies, the steps of the point of no return, the bits where you have to take bits out, put in temporary objects, and also various features like how much grease and adhesive you use and other things you don't generally model in CAD. So yes, that can be managed. Any other questions? Does that answer your question, by the way? Do you pop in another question if it didn't? Yes, Delmia. It's using the same client as CATIA, so you're not really leaving CATIA. It doesn't feel like you're leaving CATIA, and you're using the live 3D data to make a process plan there. So once you've got the MBOM, you can then turn it into a process plan and also then apply it to a real a representation of the actual manufacturing plant, so you can lay out, plan with timings, and even simulate things like failures and backups, and well, not backups, as when the process starts bottlenecking, where the problems lie with your plan before you've actually put it down on the workshop floor. So hopefully that has answered your question now. If so, any other questions from anyone else? The question is, integrated with ERP, would I recommend doing it after EBOM stage or MBOM stage? That's company specific, I find. Some companies, if they're relatively straightforward bombs in that the CAD is how it goes together, the EBOM is the obvious choice. You wouldn't generally have an MBOM at all. The ERP generally works around the purchasing, so that will pretty much use the configured EBOM to get the right amount of things, and the people in the workshop floor will use the MBOM to actually work from, to assemble it and use their work instructions, or use it to generate the work instructions to put it together. I'll admit there's a little bit of crossover between them, and it's defining where the line can be is, like I say, company specific depending on how the processes work, but that's something we'd have to consult on at the time. Okay. So any further questions from anyone else? Just give you time to type it out so I don't cut you off. Nope. Looks like that might be all of them. Okay, so, well, many thanks for turning up and for the questions. So, oh, hang on, we have one more. Service bombs. So when you have a question here about how do we manage service bombs. There is a system in the EBOM process called spare part bombs, which you attach to the main bomb, which contains a separate bomb we put together manually, containing all the parts you'd need to purchase along with doing services. So you can, once you have the parts assembled, synchronized across into EBOM, you can then use those individually and build your own bombs up outside of CAD for service bomb management. Some of you obviously name them correctly, so they can be identified as such. Then there's no real reason why you shouldn't be able to do servicing bombs or doing any other kind of bombs, because there are rather a lot of different things you can call a bomb, in my experience, and everyone has their own different opinion of what one is. And yes, spare parts bomb is a out-of-the-box feature, to answer that question. It was not covered in this because it's we didn't actually cover quite a lot of bomb functionality due to the general relative brevity of this webinar. Like I say, I didn't want to turn this into a training course. Oh, sorry, just been asked to repeat that. The spare part bomb is available out of the box. You do not need customization to get access to this. Okay, I'm assuming by the fact that no one else has asked any questions in the meantime that no one else has any questions themselves. So I think we're going to call it a day there and say thank you for all coming. And if you do want to find the recording, it should be up shortly on the Intrintis website, as I said before. Go there and click on the banner at the top for the webinar recordings, and we should be able to get it to you. So, thank you all, and goodbye.